North Korea attempts another ballistic missile launch but fails. President Park Geun-hye once again pledges to put a stop to Pyongyang's provocations. China calls off plans for a joint patrol with Korea to monitor illegal fishing, the second cancellation since they started more than 10 years ago. And Syrian rebels backed by Turkish tanks and warplanes seized the symbolically important town of Dabiq from the Islamic State group. These and more coming right up.
Hello, it's Monday, October 17th here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. North Korea has once again attempted to launch a ballistic missile and failed. The test was detected over the weekend, marking the regime's seventh so far this year. It came less than a week before key talks between Seoul and Washington's foreign and defense ministers. Kwon Jang-ho has our top story.
At around 12:30 p.m. Korea time on Saturday, North Korea attempted to launch a single Musudan intermediate-range ballistic missile. According to U.S. Strategic Command, the launch was detected near the northwestern city of Busan, but it apparently failed shortly after takeoff. It's the seventh Musudan missile to have been tested this year alone. Only one of them has been successful. Seoul strongly condemned Saturday's launch, stressing that it was yet another violation of UN sanctions.
This latest provocation is an attack on the UN's authority. This reckless behavior will only strengthen the resolve of the international community to increase pressure and sanctions on the regime. We must make Pyongyang realize that such actions will only make it more isolated and will bring more economic difficulties.
The launch is thought to be a reaction to the joint South Korea-US naval drills that concluded on Saturday, as well as a comment made earlier this week by Daniel Russell, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, who said if North Korean leader Kim Jong-un were to carry out a nuclear attack, U.S. retaliation would mean he would immediately die. Pyongyang called the statement a hostile act, hurting the dignity of the regime's leadership and going beyond the limits of tolerance. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
And President Park Geun-hye has again condemned North Korea's obsession with its nuclear and missile programs at the expense of its people who are suffering from flood damage and economic difficulties. In a video message shared at an event for South Korean residents from North Korea, the president said her government will closely coordinate with the international community to end Pyongyang's reign of terror, and Seoul will not compromise with the regime's tyranny. President Park also vowed all-out efforts for peaceful reunification so people can once again set foot in their hometowns north of the border. A high-profile North Korean defector has exposed part of the regime's plans to upgrade its nuclear capabilities. Tae Yong-ho, the North's former ambassador to London, says Pyongyang was looking to bribe a UK intelligence officer with £1 million or $1.2 million to obtain British nuclear secrets. According to the British newspaper Sunday Express, Thae revealed the plot in an intelligence debriefing after he defected, saying the pressure to carry out the order was the reason he walked away from the regime. Thae reportedly told his superiors that it was an impossible mission, but was warned failure would mean the end of his career. Thae eventually contacted a British intelligence officer he met playing golf and revealed his intention to defect. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin met on the sidelines of the annual BRICS summit this weekend and vowed to boost cooperation on a number of issues. The two leaders also had an in-depth exchange of views on the Korean Peninsula situation. They agreed to maintain close communication and coordination to jointly safeguard peace and stability in Northeast Asia. But according to the China Daily, while they expressed concern over North Korea's continued nuclear and missile provocations, Xi and Putin once again reportedly expressed opposition to intensified sanctions against the regime and to the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD to South Korea. China is temporarily halting its joint patrol with Korea to monitor illegal fishing off their respective coasts. The cancellation comes amid heightened tensions over a recent clash between the Korean Coast Guard and Chinese boats fishing illegally in Korea's waters. Kim Hae-sung has more.
Beijing has cancelled plans with Seoul this week to jointly patrol the sea between Korea and China. According to Korea's Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, Seoul and Beijing were planning to have joint crews monitor activity in their respective fishing waters for 5 days starting Wednesday. But the ministry said China on Friday asked to cancel the inspection. Since 2005, Korea and China have held regular joint patrols of illegal fishing boats in the West Sea to help raise awareness of and crack down on illegal fishing. This marks the second time China's canceled the patrol. The last time was 2 years ago when a crew member on a Chinese boat fishing in Korean waters was killed by the Korean Coast Guard after threatening the Korean officers with violence. Tensions have risen again between Seoul and Beijing over poaching after 2 Chinese fishing vessels sank a speedboat belonging to the Korean Coast Guard on October 7th. Following the incident, Seoul said it would allow its Coast Guard officers to use weapons like onboard cannon and handguns in response to increasing violence from Chinese fishing crews, while Beijing has warned Seoul to refrain from abusing its power. Korea's Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said it will consider whether it should push for future joint patrols or not. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
The Korean government plans to designate 3 more special disaster zones: Yangsan City in Gyeongsangnam-do Province, all of Jeju-do Island, and Busan's Saha-gu district. All of the areas were hardest hit by Typhoon Chaba, which killed at least 7 people and caused millions of dollars in property damage. With a special disaster zone status, those areas will be entitled to disaster relief from the central government, as well as tax benefits and lower utility fees for residents. Prior to that, the northern part of Ulsan City and Uljugun County, which saw severe flooding, were designated as special disaster zones as of October 10th. The Korean won has strengthened the most compared to 27 major currencies, prompting concerns local exporters are losing their price competitiveness. The Bank for International Settlement says its index gauging the exchange rate fluctuation for Korea stood at 118.53 as of the end of August, up around 4% since the end of June. That's the highest rate of increase among 27 currencies, including the Japanese yen and Chinese yuan. The so-called effective exchange rate index describes the relative strength of a currency relative to a basket of other currencies. A reading over 100 means a certain currency has strengthened against the other. As Korea's population ages, the employment rate for silver and senior citizens has hit a record high. A report by the Labor Ministry shows that the employment rate of those 50 and older came in at over 55% last year. The number of people working in that age group stood at around 9.6 million, accounting for more than a third of the total employed population. The ministry has vowed to push ahead with reforms in the labor market to create more suitable jobs for this growing sector of the population. 1,020 free Wi-Fi hotspots will be available for the Korean public by next year, according to the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning. On Sunday, the plan is aimed at closing the internet access gap between income groups and also between the different regions of the country. The ministry plans to work with the nation's internet service providers to set up the hotspots at public facilities such as traditional markets and community centers. With the additions, the nation's total number of public Wi-Fi hotspots will come to around 13,300. Now, a big blow to the so-called Islamic State as another of its Syrian strongholds has fallen to rebel forces. The Turkey-backed rebels said Sunday that they seized control of the symbolic town of Dabiq with barely a shot fired. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the rebels moved in as ISIS fighters withdrew. Watchers say it was a small but significant victory for the rebels. Dabiq has played an important role in ISIS propaganda since it was seized by the group's fighters in 2014. ISIS says the town would be the site of a great battle between Muslims and the West that would herald the apocalypse. As experimental probe is expected to land on Mars this week as part of a joint European-Russian mission aimed at exploring the red planet's atmosphere and searching for signs of life. The 600-kilogram probe separated from an unmanned craft on Sunday and is expected to enter Mars at a speed of 21,000 kilometers an hour. The probe, that's called Schiaparelli, will take images of Mars and conduct scientific measurements on the surface, but its main purpose is to test technology for a future European Mars rover. Its mothership will remain in orbit to analyze gases in the Martian atmosphere to help answer whether there is or was life on Mars. It's hoped this probe will fare better than its predecessor Beagle 2, which vanished on Christmas Day in 2003 after separating from the Mars Express orbiter. It's quite normal to bleed after an injection, and for the average person, there's not much harm done. However, there are significant side effects for those who suffer from disease that prevent the blood from clotting, such as hemophilia and diabetes. But now, Korean researchers have developed a needle that will not make patients bleed. Park Se-young tells us more.
A tube of water covered with artificial skin leaks if pierced with a regular needle. But this needle, coated with a hemostatic substance, prevents water from escaping the tube. The so-called bloodless needle was developed by a team of researchers at KAIST. It has a solid film coating that dissolves into a hydrogel when it comes into contact with blood, preventing blood loss. The needle has so far proven effective in studies with mice and rabbits with hemophilia. The research team developed a hemostatic substance by using an adhesive substance similar to what mussels use to cling to rocks amid crashing waves.
The material we used has excellent interaction with blood, which further maximizes the hemostatic effects.
The researchers added that the film is broken down over time, causing no harm to the human body. The study, published in the online version of the journal Nature Materials, is set to enter the clinical trial phase of testing on human subjects. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
A growing number of people in Korea are choosing a minimalist lifestyle. The new trend is possibly a strong reaction to the prevailing tendency toward excessive consumption in Korean society. Hwang Ho-jun explains why less is more.
Many working women come home at the end of the day, only to spend their free time on household chores. That's why this teacher, wife, mother, and dog owner decided to get rid of everything but the essentials in her home. She started with the piles of clothes she had not been wearing for years, then moved on to her flower pots and the rest. In just 1 month, she was able to get rid of about 500 items that she either tossed, donated, or gave away. Now it's been 3 years, and she says she's found happiness from getting rid of useless items and focusing more on things she cares about.
My criteria for happiness have changed. Before, I wanted to own everything other people had and found happiness in buying new things. Now I like sharing.
This year, tens of thousands of Koreans have joined in the movement to declutter their homes and live a more minimalist lifestyle. One online community devoted to decluttering has over 45,000 registered users, and more books on the subject are being published. Experts say the trend seems like an effort to find an alternative to the tendency toward excessive consumption, with more people thinking about the idea of responsible consumption.
It seems as though we're moving from an era of luxury to one of value. It's a combination of self-reflection on consumerism and an emphasis on various methods of ethical consumption.
Although many people remain skeptical that the trend will seep into the mainstream, it has already encouraged more people to pair their belongings so they can focus on finding new ways to bring meaning and happiness into their lives. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
And that wraps it up for now. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. I'll be back in less than 2 hours for more news updates. So do stay tuned and goodbye for now.